So first and foremost, thanks for being members here on the Patreon. For the last 3 or 4 days, I've gotten to spend time with my spiritual advisor, Sean Havas, the videographer, the guy that's been doing a lot of the work for us. He's just fantastic. We were down in South Carolina for our event at Sorinex, and we got to talking about an awful lot of things. One of them was just content creation. I love making stuff, I love showcasing it. There's an awful lot of stuff we keep behind the curtain, and he was asking more and more about that. One of the things that I've always been extremely reserved regarding is talking about weapons and things like that. You see what you see with it. We post some things on Instagram. That's not really the platform for it. And I also like to stay in my lane. For many, many years, arguably maybe too many, I've had the perspective of, I'm not law enforcement, I'm not military, this isn't my lane. A handful of people, and then most recently Sean, has pointed out that when it comes to people protecting themselves, normal people protecting themselves without government provisions or permissions, the way I've lived my life might actually be more valuable, at least as valuable. I've been doing weird shit with weird people since I was a kid and having to pay attention to my safety since I was very young. And the reality is, what you're carrying around to protect yourself requires an enormous amount of consideration. If you haven't trained with it, it will very likely not work when you need it. If it's clumsy, if it doesn't make sense, if it's some LARPy, mystified thing, it's very likely not going to work. It can probably hurt you more than it can help you. The other thing I found, and this is with extensive conversations, is that there's a gigantic disconnect between putting something in your pocket and actually considering taking it out. The idea of carrying around something to use in the worst possible scenario is heavy duty stuff. If you're gonna carry it with you, it should be well considered, and you should have already planned that you will use it to defend yourself or others if needed. That's often scary and definitely sucks, but it's really, really important to think about. So in addition to the perspectives, Sean was asking a bunch of questions, and we were talking about what I carry around and why, and when. The answer is different all the time, honestly. I don't have 75 things I carry around. There are 3 or 4 things that I carry around. I practice with them all the time, and there's always a reason. The next thing I'll say is, this is Patreon. I'm not gonna say check your local laws. I'm not gonna say all that stuff, because the reality of 2023 is, in my perspective, and this is just mine, my protection and the safety of others trumps all of that stuff. We know the criminals are not paying attention to laws. We know bad people that are trying to harm us are not paying attention to decency and common sense. We know the laws in many states are insanely restrictive and engineered to not keep us safe. I can make a pretty good argument that gun laws in places like New York and California actually make a gun more dangerous for a lot of reasons. So I'm just gonna give you a short overview today of a handful of things to carry around and why. All of this is, of course, up to you. If you don't want to carry stuff around to protect yourself, then don't. If you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. If you are and you haven't thought about it, think about it. Practice with it, drill it. It will not work if you haven't, and I can say that because I've been in situations where it's needed to work and wouldn't have otherwise. Simplicity always leads the dance. Why we do what we do is just as important as strength and conditioning or martial arts or something like that. If you're traveling and you don't have access to much else, a lot of really cool companies are making really sneaky little tools. This is a pen from our friends at Survival Tactical Company, Survival Tactical Supply. It's a G10 spike that goes through an awful lot of stuff, drywall, a pig, whatever you need to go through. And it's just a last ditch tool that you can carry in your backpack, you can carry in your purse, you can carry in your pocket. It's a backup for a backup. This little thing is from Cold Steel. It's an impact weapon. It would make your fist a little bit harder. I think in an absolute emergency, you could probably break something significant with it. I've put it through some drywall. I've put it through some of the whiteboard we have here. I haven't put it through glass, but it goes through the other stuff, which definitely means that it would do enough damage to a human to get them off of you. Additionally, if you know how to fight and you know how to use leverage, this thing creates a little bit of encouragement for that leverage to work a little bit easier. So this thing is cheap. It's $6 or $8. Nobody's gonna know what it is. You wanna carry something like this around, it might help you. Where we start getting into the other stuff is something like this. This is from a company called Damage Tools. He's a really cool dude. This is kind of a partial brass knuckle and also an opener. This will break glass. It will also break an awful lot of other stuff. Again, consider where you are, consider what you need. This is something that stays in your pocket. No one's gonna see it. And if it needs to come out of your pocket, no one is gonna see it. How you hold your hands, where you carry your things, all very, very important. Today, if I'm wandering around in essentially sweatpants to come to the gym for the evening, I've always got something on me that can make a hole in something if I need to. This is something old from Offensive Industries, and a lot of really cool, great people make these things now. I like this one because it's got the shape of the Elvias that I like to carry around, and it's prioritized for blade down. We can go over more of this later, but after many, many years of practicing with things, and then these last handful of years of talking to Ed, for my money, my opinion, and even my experience, blade down is a safer, more strategic way to fight with a knife. God forbid you ever have to. This is also G10. If you need to dispose of this, you can dispose of this. It will absolutely go through what you need it to go through. We've practiced it. And some of these things have either a little toggle on the sheath so that you pull it out and the sheath stays where it's supposed to stay. This one has a hook. So if you put it in your pocket and you need this thing to come out and you don't want to take the sheath, then you just pull and the sheath goes away. Last for today. If you're a firearms person, there's a lot of considerations of where, when, what. Primarily, Sean and I were talking about that. He's in Florida. We're both in somewhat sketchy situations relatively often. And I was talking about the fact that I'll usually have a Glock 43X with me if I'm in New York. Certain other places, I'll keep that with me. But if I'm in a place where I'm really unfamiliar and I don't necessarily feel at a massive amount of risk, but you always want to stay safe and considerate of that stuff, I will very often carry a revolver, and I will very often carry a .22 revolver that has 8 shots. I'm considering then what I'm doing and where. If I'm going to be in small retail places and fitness places and things like that, this may be enough. The other thing to consider here that I enjoy is that you're not going to leave casings. No brass comes out of the revolver, of course. And if you're in another state and God forbid, again, we get into trouble, not leaving a trace of yourself is very, very important. It's something to consider. It's not fun stuff to consider, but it's important stuff to consider. I have a Ruger revolver. I have this Smith & Wesson Airlight. Both are 22s. I have a 9mm revolver too, and I have a 38. I like this one because it's extremely light. If I'm running around in sweatpants for the gym, I usually have an actual different kind of clip for that, but it's invisible and it's light enough to do exactly what it needs to do. So my encouragement here is check your gear, practice with your gear. The things I showed today are just a couple of things that we use and hang on to. And even the holster for this, when I try and get this holster out, even though this is not a holster engineered for these pants, I've practiced enough with this to know that it's not coming out when the gun comes out. I know that for certain because I've practiced it extensively. So, We can go through as much of this stuff or as little of this stuff as you guys want. If this is not helpful, we won't do it. But I am gonna make 2 or 3 more videos showcasing what we do and why in the exact same way that we do with strength and conditioning. Again, thanks for being here. Thanks for the attention to this. Always happy to field questions. And a reminder, the reason this is on Patreon is because I don't want 75 people going, 22 stopping power, blah, 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 G10, faulty, blah, 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 whatever. This is stuff that we've practiced with, carry for a reason, and understand both its advantages and its fallibilities. Nothing is perfect. You gotta consider your environment, you gotta consider your goals. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. See you again soon.